Good afternoon, and it's a beautiful afternoon. I've been enjoying every moment of it. I'm sitting here on my porch and looking at the figs. So many that I'll be making preserves and eating fresh soon enough. It is now the 27th of July. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? There's several places I noted that there were 2 figs coming out of the node. Like in this instance right here. You see that right there? I love my chimes. I made this one. I made quite a few of them really over the years. What I'm going to talk about today, though, is how it's beneficial, infinitely so, actually, because there's no end to it, really, to probe deeply into the mystery of your fig trees and your general produce and garden produce and things. Just observing closely. And what you can determine, or what you can find out or discover by doing so. And you might say, well, what do you mean, Lou? What do you mean about probing or observing as deeply as you can sometimes? This is what I mean. We are all inobservant. We're guilty of it. Trust me. You know it's true. I know it's true. It's true of all of us. There's so much we miss. We miss so much detail. It's a very busy time of the year here in July at this location in 7B. And so I'm going to pause on and off if I hear any noises that I don't want in the video necessarily. Mopeds and so on and so forth. Maybe I'll get fortunate and there won't be so many. But let's talk about this subject a little bit. I'm just going to show a couple of examples and then I'm going to shorten this video. And I want to show you, so stay tuned, stay on board, don't abandon ship. I want to show you my Smith. I have 2 Smith trees growing in this location, both that wintered, one wintered 2 winters, and one, the small one, that wintered 1. And I'm going to show you some differences and the reasons why. And this is one of the examples of probing deeply into nature, observing things. Because the longer you look, it's incredible. Things begin to come into view that you never imagined. For all of us, for me, for you, for everyone. This is true. This is a fact. It's an incontrovertible, indisputable fact that the depth of nature the absolute depth of it is infinite. And the longer we observe it and pay attention to detail, the more we learn. So, where do I start? Oh, let's start here. Here's something that you might miss, anyone might miss, really, and not be paying attention to. So we're going to pay attention to it today. This is one of my 3 Celeste trees that I have here. This tree. And this one was in the video recently with Big Bill when he visited. And I showed you how big this tree was at one time. And you can see that that's the trunk that I cut off. It was a very cold winter that winter. It was maybe 7 years ago. Could have been 8. I lose track. When the bay froze all the way across. And the old timers said that they never saw a winter like that, where the winds kept howling. It was cold, 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 and it blew and blew and blew. And to make matters worse, the tide came up, the salt water came up in the yard 2 times that winter. I don't know if it was because of the ice or what it was because of, or just the nor'easters that there were. It was just a terrible, terrible winter. And so this died back quite a bit. It wasn't completely. I've never had a tree die in this zone completely, meaning that including the roots where there wouldn't be a shoot coming up eventually. So this one died pretty much down. It wasn't complete. There was a few little branches that were still alive. Again, look how large that is. And that's not nearly as big as some of the ones that I have around here. Most got cut down that year. That was the only time in 31 years that I ever had that occur. And the new shoots came up because, again, the roots didn't die. The new shoots came up, and here you have a tree. And I cut them down again and again, and you will see that pattern everywhere. But I've referred to this tree as ordinary Celeste, not a strain that perhaps I value as much as the others that I found over the years and years of my lifetime. I'd say in the 44 years that I've been here at this location, I've slowly discovered certain strains of Celeste here and in other places that I value more, but I don't misunderstand me. I love this tree, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. But they're not real large like some of the larger Celeste. They're very delicious, though. They're very tasty. And the thing that distinguishes this Celeste tree, and if you took a cutting from it, you could expect the same. And that's why it's so important to observe, yes, even among the same variety, to observe differences in trees and differences even in the branches. When you look at the branches, look at what branches really display the best characteristics that you are looking for in a particular variety, even if it's the same variety. Don't overlook that. That's extremely important. I can't stress it enough. But this particular tree has a proclivity to fruit and ripen its fruit almost at once. It does that all the time. It always has. It always will. And let me explain in more detail what exactly I mean and show you the difference between this and, say, another Celeste. But do you see how every single fig is really the same size? Almost. In the same stage of development. Look, we're going to look around and I'm going to show you. We're probing. In fact, probing. I think I'm going to name this video something about probing, probing deeply, or something of that on that subject. And when you're watching the video, you will remember and you will recall that it was the primary theme. Do you see how they're all, in a maturation sense of the word, all about the same maturity? There's not a big difference. You don't see a lot of what I always call baby figs. Where are my baby figs? There's not a lot here. There's none. How many? None. There are none. They are all the same size. Now, you might miss that if you were taking a branch from a tree and you wanted a cutting, say, from your neighbor Celeste, or hopefully the person you're purchasing the tree from would notice this too and prevent you from getting it. I mean, please don't get me wrong. I've had this tree here for at least 28 years. And I'm not getting rid of it because it has a purpose. But when this begins to get ripe, around the 8th or 10th of August, soon, they'll just all get ripe almost at once. And in a week period, and I mean that, in a week period, they'll be done. The tree's done. Look at it. You can see for yourself. Look. This tree will yield all of its fruit almost on a given day. It does every year. Now, is that something that you ever observed before? Maybe not. And that's what the point of this video is all about. Okay? So why is that a good thing? Why have I kept it? Hey, Lou, why did you keep it? I kept it because when I make preserves, or I make sure I'm here, I know exactly when this tree will begin to ripen. And when I'm here, and I'm here for a week or 8 days or 10, I'm going to eat every one of these figs. It's not a real big tree right now. I've kept it that way, and I'll put a net around it so the birds won't get it. I'll tie it at the bottom with a rope or a string, and so that they can't get in. The birds are quite vicious here sometimes. And I'll get to eat every single one of these delicious figs because I will time it to where I am here, and they will all get ripe at once. And I'll have a fig feast. That's why it's valuable. That's why it's different. That's why I keep it. I'll make some preserves too. Some delicious preserves. Which in my opinion, and here we go, neck on the chopping block, for what it's worth, I like Celeste preserves better than any other. That doesn't mean it's the best. It just means I like them the best. Have I tasted every other fig in a preserve form? No. So let's just, we might want to reframe that and say that of all the figs I've ever tasted, and I've tasted quite a few varieties. I've grown over 100 varieties over the years, far more. And of all of the fig varieties that I've made preserves from, I like Celeste the most. So that's why it's valuable. Now, let's just hop over here, not far away. Now, look at the growth pattern of that tree, too. See how it's tall? And all of the fruit is on the top. Look at it. You see that? And here's another Celeste tree. This one is the one I've talked about before that belonged to my father at one time. And it's only a couple years old, and the deer have been eating down one side of it. I have a better specimen of this home in New Jersey, and my brother-in-law has an incredible specimen of this, which I put in a video several years ago, and the title is No Brainer Figs. So you might want to watch that video. I promise you'll enjoy it. No Brainer Figs. And it's a long story about my dad's gift from me to him for Father's Day 31 years ago or so. And I sent away long before the internet and all that, long before cell phones and everything. And I sent away to California, and I got an incredible strain. And I get more on that later, but I have a better sample of this tree in New Jersey, in Zone 7A, growing without protection. And my brother-in-law also lives in 7A, and he hasn't had any dieback for years, over 10 years, I think. His tree is just magnificent. I'm going to go make another film of that. And so it would be No Brainer Figs 2. You'll want to see this tree. It's just phenomenal. Okay? And I hear people on the internet talking, oh, well, Celeste, Celeste is common. Let me tell you something. Celeste is not common. And what I mean by that, there might be lots of them all over the place, because they're so hardy and because they're so resistant to bad climate and weather and cold. But it's not a common fig in the sense that it is an extraordinarily good fig cultivar. Not common at all. Okay? I like it. And I like certain strains of it. And we've talked about this before. But if you look here, you will see some variation in the size of the figs, you see? If you look around, you will see that. Some are larger, some are smaller. And why is that important? Well, you're going to get a longer season when it starts to ripen. You're going to get not all of them ripen at first. They're not going to all ripen at first, but they're going to ripen over a longer season. Okay, some of these little ones will ripen later. And that's a good thing. Okay? And it has other characteristics that I have talked about before and we'll talk about again. Now, before I wear this subject out, I would like to direct your attention to the Smith trees. And I'm just going to hop along here. Here we have a thing that we don't want in the yard. A mushroom. So this is a Smith tree that I planted a couple years ago. And it grew out a little bit, and then winter came along. And I have a theory, and I've mentioned this before, that the pulpwood, the actual soft pulpwood in certain varieties, is what determines if they are winter hardy or not, or more winter hardy than not. And I've noticed by cutting lots of different varieties and examining the pulpwood and stabbing it with a pin or a nail, I noticed that the consistency of the pulpwood is very different among varieties. You can do it yourself. Cut some cuttings at the same time of the year, same time, and just examine the pulpwood. Examine the thickness of the pulpwood. Examine other variations, maybe slight variations in the softness and in the moisture consistency. Now, you would want to do this among trees that have been just watered from the rain and, everything the same. You don't want too many variables or no variables. Try to eliminate all of the variables. And then you will see, as I have seen, that the pulpwood is different in many varieties. And I think that's where the winter hardiness aspect can best be explained. That's my opinion. I have no conclusive proof. It's just years of observation. There's got to be a reason why one tree is more winter hardy than another. Let's look at this. Let's just deduce it, okay? Or reduce it to the least common denominator. Trees that don't have pulpwood like fig trees, like pears and apples and plums, they're far more winter hardy. Well, why is that? All the wood is wood. And there's no pulp wood, like in a fig. A fig is distinguishable from all of the rest, including persimmons. How? Because it has a pulpwood. Okay? And so, in my opinion, therein lies the difference as to why a fig tree is less winter hardy than, say, a pear tree or an apple tree. And if there are variations in the pulpwood, if one variety has a certain pulpwood, let's go over to another tree, because I want to show you the other. I really haven't finished. I don't want to get off on a tangent either, but if there's a variation in the pulpwood between one variety and another, then that might be the reason why one particular tree is hardier than another. And I think that's the reason. Well, I've noticed over the years that there are boundaries, climatic boundaries. There's like, where maybe a tree will be hardy in a zone and maybe it just barely won't be hardy. Okay, it's sort of like in between. Okay, now this one I think is in between, and I'm going to show you why. Okay, so what I mean by that is it survived. The pulpwood, I think, took some damage because the cold winds blow right through here from the bay. This is the northwest. I'm pointing towards the northwest, and there's nothing to stop, not even under the deck. There's nothing to stop the cold winds from blowing in. And so it's not a microclimate. And it took a beating, I think. And I think that the pulpwood got damaged. I think that the pulpwood's damaged up here, and I'm going to cut it. I just haven't gotten around to it. I'm going to cut it down to a foot above the ground. And I think that might solve the problem, because the pulpwood is more sensitive to the cold when it's younger, meaning the higher branches and the thinner branches. The thicker the branches, wood is a good insulator, and the closer to the ground, and because of the geothermal energy and heat that comes off the ground, that is a place where you will more often find undamaged wood, even the pulpwood. And so what do I mean by all of this? I mean that sometimes the pulpwood can be damaged, but it will still have leaves. Leaves will still grow, and you think it's okay, but it's not really okay. Other times, they might die back. It might just die back, depending on the variety and the climate. And so you cut them all off. But just because there's leaves doesn't mean that it wasn't damaged or that the pulpwood wasn't somewhat damaged. And I've observed this over the years. So again, the way to rectify this tree, and I just haven't gotten around to it, is to cut it low and then see what happens. And I think it'll be okay. Okay. Part of the explanation too could be some nematodes, and I did notice some, but it wasn't a bad infestation. So I don't think that is the primary reason. I think it's because the pulpwood got damaged. All right. So what am I saying now? I'm saying that this tree probably needs more of a microclimate than some of the other varieties I have growing, like the Celeste, that do not need a microclimate in this location, in this 7B location. So if I cut that off, and if I get a warm winter, and if it makes new sprouts next summer, and if it survives and the pulpwood doesn't get damaged, and I have a couple good mild winters in a row, I'm hoping that this tree will eventually flourish. And that's my expectation. But for now, you've observed something. You've observed something that's very different. Very rare that this ever happens to me. Let's look at the other Smith tree, a smaller tree that I planted around this time, maybe the beginning of August. So it's only been in the ground 1 year. And I'm going to go do it right now and start talking about it. Now here is that Smith tree. And in the last video, when Big Bill from Off the Beaten Path Nursery visited, and I posted that video, you will see this tree. It was only 12 days ago, or 13. And look at the difference in size of this tree. I had to put another cage over it. Let me take this off. It's gotten bigger. It outgrew the cage that was around it then. It's gotten taller, and I want to talk about it. Now this one, and I talked a little bit about it then. This particular Smith is only 1 year old. I grew it from a cutting last spring, and I transplanted it here at the end of July, or maybe the beginning of August. And now it's the end of July, the 27th of July. And so it's only a 1 year old, roughly a couple months more when I had the cutting, tree. And it's doing marvelously. And because it was younger, you would think or expect that it was more tender, because younger trees are more susceptible to winter kill and dieback. But because it's in a microclimate, here comes a tractor. Because it's in a microclimate, it fared better than the other Smith that we just spoke about. Now see, I observed this, and I'm pointing you to this observation. It's a very important observation to make. This tree is on the cusp, I believe. It's on the cusp. It's on the very thin edge of being winter hardy in this zone. So it's paramount that this tree be planted in a microclimate. And this building prevents the northwest winds from hitting it. Remember, I have other videos. In one of my videos, I talked about wind chill. Wind chill matters. Wind chill does matter. It really does matter. A lot. And of course the microclimate and the warmer temperatures as the sun beats down in this location in the daytime as opposed to the other makes a difference over the long course of the long winter. And this tree's doing much better, and it's the same variety. In fact, it came from the same tree. Now look at this tree. Look how solid the bottom is. It's very solid. Somebody's firing off some fireworks. And notice how I made sure that it has several nice shoots coming out close to the ground. 1, 2, 3 nice solid branches, which is always nice. And then 2 large ones here, offshoots, and another coming from here. You see that? I hope I'm getting this all in the video. And look how thick this new growth is. And look at the figs developing on this new growth. And here's 2 to the node, 2 again over here. I don't know if you can see these. This is a solid tree. This tree is golden. It's flourishing. It's happy. When I planted this tree, I did not make the hole much larger than the root ball. And I made it deeper though, and I put crushed oyster shells. I love calcium. And I put Epsom salt, and I put some iron, and all the things in some of my other videos that you can refer to, and they're posted, about some of the volcanic materials that I use from deep inside a volcano. And other people might say, it doesn't matter. Well, maybe it doesn't matter. But look at the figs. Look at all the figs. And everyone says, geez, look at your figs. Your figs are just growing so beautifully. They're beautiful figs. Why are they beautiful? Am I some kind of a super genius? No. I'm just a backyard fig grower. But I had the benefit of my ancestors, my family, and I learned from them, and I learned that you want to try to reproduce a lot of the soil conditions that you might find, say, in Mediterranean, around Italy or Greece or Spain, places like that, where figs just love, or Turkey even, where figs just love to grow and flourish and be abundant producers. And they have a lot of calcium, a lot of lime in the ground, a lot of other nutrients. Some of the places are volcanic. My father was born at the foot of Mount Vesuvius, the famous volcano of Pompeii. And in his area, and he described it to me so many times, the figs and how delicious they were and how they grew in that volcanic soil. It makes a difference. It does make a difference. You might not see it right away, but it makes a difference. And here's the difference. And look at all of my videos. I want you to look at them. That's what my videos are all about. They're for you. Okay, I want to pass this all along. And that's what I'm trying to do. And to observe things. But this has fruit on it too. Look at the fruit. Look at the beautiful figs on this thing, which I will enjoy soon. Because I will put that cage back on it, and then I will protect it. I hope I haven't been getting my fingers in the video. I have a tendency to do that. My hands start giving away. But this is a perfect example of a tree that I believe is on the cusp, on the sharp edge of not being winter hardy in this zone. But if you afford it a sweet spot, a place where it can gain a little protection from the cold winter winds, it's going to flourish. And so I showed you. And this is what we can observe when we probe deeply into nature. And we try to observe things and learn by what we see and apply it to our techniques. So I won't wear this one out anymore. I could go on to every tree and start talking about things that I've observed. And I will, and I have, and I'm gonna. But for now, I think I made my point. And I enjoyed your visit. I hope you enjoyed visiting. Strive for the very best cuttings that you can. Observe characteristics in your cuttings that you want in a fig tree. Take those cuttings and those cuttings only. Or if you're buying individual trees, inspect them the way I have. Most of all the trees I've ever bought, I looked at them myself before I chose them. I personally looked at the tree. I visited the nursery and I looked at the tree. Or I went to a relative or a friend and I observed what are the characteristics that I am looking for in a fig tree. And if I didn't see those characteristics, well, I didn't take a cutting, or I didn't take the tree or buy the tree. That's an important factor. You can't always do that, I understand that. You have fig bid, you have all these things, and there you have to rely on good sellers, reliable sellers that have integrity, that are honest, and there are some. So you have your homework to do, but you can still do the homework. You can still do the homework. Okay, hold on one second. Here's another Celeste. I wanted to quickly point out. Now look at the characteristics of this tree. Look how it's more upright than the one I just showed you of my father's. Look how it's tall and upright. And the whole growth pattern, the whole branch pattern is different. It's just a different tree, sort of, as far as the scaffolding is concerned. Now, it also has quite a few little figs, which means a longer season than the one I showed you that had all of the same size figs. If you look around, you will find smaller figs. You see this? So, when the bigger ones get ripe, I'll still have some that will be getting ripe afterwards. This tree has a longer period of fruition, which is very, very good for me, because I don't want to just always have every tree that, see that small fig, and so I don't want to have everything get ripe at once on all my trees. But since I have one that I call ordinary Celeste, and it's not ordinary, but it came from this area many, many years ago, I keep it because, again, I can come here, I can plan my vacation, I can eat all the figs, and I can make preserves all at once in a matter of a week's time. And then these other trees will still produce fruit, you know, before and after, so that's good. All right. Thanks for your visit. I hope you're having a wonderful summer. I hope many of your fruit trees are about to come into fruition. Remember, look for those favorable variations, those favorable attributes and traits, even among the same variety of fig trees. It makes a difference. Good day.